The star charts had no record of the planet we were landing on. It wasn't marked in any intergalactic database, nor did it appear in any of our scouting missions. Yet here it was, nestled among the stars, a barren rock that somehow seemed alive. I was part of a research expedition and elite crew sent by the Federation of Galactic Unity to explore the unknown and report our findings. We had just entered the atmosphere of a remote system, a location even the most seasoned explorers had written off as too inhospitable to harbor life. The planet was a dark, desolate world, storms of acid rain and an atmosphere thick with toxic gases. It should have been impossible for any living organism to survive, let alone for anything to have left a trace. Yet when we touched down, we found something that defied all logic. The surface was a jagged expanse of cracked, blackened earth. The winds howled through the desolate landscape, carrying with them the unmistakable scent of sulfur and decay. The temperature was so cold that the air itself seemed to freeze in the stillness, the kind of chill that gnawed at your bones. The gravity was heavier than that of Earth, making every step feel like a burden. The scanners on our suits showed minimal atmospheric pressure, with barely enough oxygen to keep us alive for short bursts. There was no sign of life, no trace of anything that could have walked this desolate world. But there were footprints. In the distance, etched into the cracked, blackened surface of the planet's barren plains, we saw what looked like footprints. They were unmistakable, human-shaped, as if someone had walked across the planet's surface, leaving an imprint in the dust and ash. My heart skipped a beat. There was no way. The air was too thin, the temperature too extreme, the gravity too heavy. This planet was supposed to be incapable of sustaining any form of life, let alone intelligent beings. The prints were human-shaped, yet the thought of human life existing here, on such a God-forsaken world, was preposterous. But there they were, clear as day. The unmistakable outline of a boot tread, worn with use, leaving a trail that seemed to have no end. And that was just the beginning of what we were about to uncover. We couldn't ignore it. This was an anomaly, something far beyond our understanding. Our team moved cautiously, each of us studying the footprints with growing confusion. I watched as Dr. Thorne, the team's scientist, knelt by one of the prints. She touched the ground, inspecting it as if hoping for some kind of explanation. Her fingers brushed the surface, and her face contorted in disbelief. "This can't be right," she muttered under her breath. Commander Kor, the mission leader, didn't say anything. Instead, he gestured for us to move forward. His eyes locked onto the trail of footprints. We followed them, each step a little heavier than the last. Our boots sank into the soft dust beneath us, but the prints remained firm, almost as if they had been etched into the planet's surface by something far stronger than mere human feet. As we continued to follow the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The emptiness around us felt suffocating, like a weight pressing down on us. This place should have been lifeless, but somehow it felt as though we were not alone. The prints seemed to stretch further, winding around rocky outcrops and jagged cliffs, as though someone had walked here, exploring, traversing the impossible landscape. The strange sensation of being watched persisted as we made our way deeper into the desolation. We had all come to expect the usual silence of an uninhabited world, but this was different. The very air seemed to hum with some unseen force, a tension in the atmosphere that couldn't be ignored. The impossible had just become a reality. Something had been here before us. Something human. And it was waiting to be discovered. We set out to follow the footprints, unsure of what we might find but determined to learn more. The terrain was jagged and harsh, and every step felt like a struggle. The gravity was heavy, pulling on our bodies with each movement, making it difficult to move quickly. The air was thin, and the cold gnawed at our exposed faces, but the curiosity to understand what we had found pushed us forward. The footprints led us deeper into the planet's heart, twisting and winding across the dark, cracked plains. They seemed to be a deliberate trail, as if someone had purposefully made their way across the planet. The further we ventured, the more perplexing it became. The prints didn't just appear and vanish, they remained consistent, step by step, always leading us forward. Each tread was clear, though the ground was weathered and worn. It was as though the figure, whoever they were, had walked this way for years, even centuries. The dust and debris in the prints were hardened, the edges of the imprints sharp, as if they had been there for much longer than the brief time we'd been on the planet. As we trudged through the landscape, the rocky outcrops ahead became more pronounced, and the wind began to pick up, howling across the barren land. I could feel the sting of cold in the air as the storm clouds began to gather above us, threatening to unleash their acidic fury. The terrain was desolate, with few landmarks to help us navigate. There were no signs of life, no fauna, no flora, just the jagged rocks and the endless expanse of desolate dust. Yet the prints continued. It felt like we were walking in the footsteps of someone long gone. Every step we took echoed in the hollow emptiness. The only sounds were the muffled thud of our boots hitting the ground and the distant rumble of the storm above. The footprints gave the impression that whoever had left them wasn't afraid of the inhospitable environment. They were confident, moving purposefully, and their path led us towards a massive outcrop of rock that loomed like a monolithic sentinel against the horizon. Finally, we arrived. The prints led us to what appeared to be the remnants of some sort of abandoned structure, broken, rusted metal scattered across the barren ground. It was barely recognizable as technology, but the shapes were distinct. The pieces of machinery were ancient, their once shiny surfaces long worn by the harsh conditions. Despite the decay, there was an undeniable sense that this place had once been inhabited. The structures were too deliberate to have occurred naturally. The layout was methodical, even if now it lay in ruins. I approached the nearest structure, the cold wind biting into my face as I examined the broken remnants of what might have been a research station. Panels of twisted metal lay scattered across the ground, corroded by time and exposure to the planet's harsh elements. The scene before me was one of abandonment, as though the inhabitants had fled in haste, leaving everything behind. But why? What had forced them to leave so suddenly? The answers were locked within this place, and we had to find them. Dr. Thorne knelt beside one of the metal fragments, her fingers brushing the surface, inspecting the materials with a quiet intensity. This technology, it's unlike anything we've seen before, she said softly, almost to herself. I nodded, my eyes scanning the horizon for anything else that might shed light on what had happened here. But there was nothing. No other signs of life, no other structures. Just the footprints, which seemed to have stopped at the heart of the wreckage. We need to keep moving, Commander Core finally said, his voice stern but filled with the same unease I felt. We're here for answers. Let's find them. And so we pressed on, deeper into the mystery. The footprints seemed to lead us toward a new discovery, one that would reveal the secrets of this forsaken world, the story of its lost inhabitants, and perhaps something far more disturbing than we could have ever imagined. We spent hours exploring the ruins, searching for anything that might explain what had happened here. The structures were in poor condition, their once sturdy walls now buckled and rusted, as if they had withstood centuries of relentless storms. The air was thick with the stench of corrosion and decay, and the constant howl of the wind drowned out all other sounds. Despite the oppressive atmosphere, there was an undeniable sense of something or someone watching us. It was as though the planet itself held a secret, a mystery it wasn't ready to reveal. Dr. Thorne and Commander Core had already moved ahead, their voices muffled as they inspected what remained of the technology scattered across the site. Meanwhile, I found myself standing near a large, partially buried object that looked like a cylindrical pod. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, smooth and metallic, but with intricate carvings that seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. The closer I got, the more it felt alive. The design was sophisticated far beyond anything the Federation could produce. I reached out cautiously, my gloved fingers brushing the surface. The moment I touched it, the pod hummed softly, and the air around me seemed to shift. A subtle vibration passed through the ground, like a faint tremor, but it was enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. My heart rate quickened, and I felt an unsettling sensation, as if something was about to happen. Without warning, the pod's surface seemed to ripple. The carvings began to glow with an eerie light, shifting and changing before my eyes. It was like watching the very fabric of reality bend in on itself, as though the pod was somehow pulling at the space around it. I took a step back, my instincts screaming that I needed to move away from whatever this thing was. But before I could act, a soft, mechanical voice echoed from the pod. It was faint at first, but then it grew louder, clearer, as though it was speaking directly into my mind. "We've been waiting for you." I froze, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out from the shadows, but there was no one there. Just the same empty, desolate landscape. I turned to look for my crewmates, but they were too far off to hear the voice. The voice continued, now more urgent. "You are the ones who found us. You are the ones who will carry the legacy forward." The words didn't make sense. Legacy? Who was speaking? What did they mean by carry it forward? My thoughts were a jumble as I approached the pod again, this time cautiously. The carvings on its surface shifted once more, revealing a symbol, a shape that seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. It was an insignia I had seen before. But where? It had the same design as the mysterious device we'd found earlier, the one Dr. Thorne had uncovered near the wreckage. But this was different, more advanced, more refined. Suddenly I felt a presence. Not just the voice, but something tangible, something real. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping out from behind the ruins of a nearby structure. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was humanoid, but its features were alien, glowing eyes, shimmering skin that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and an aura of both familiarity and strangeness. It was neither human nor entirely alien. The being spoke again, its voice now calm and measured. "You have questions, we have answers. But first, you must understand." The being raised its hand, and the pod before me seemed to react, its surface rippling and folding in on itself, as though the alien was manipulating the very fabric of space. I couldn't tear my eyes away, the gravity of the moment settling in. Whoever or whatever these beings were, they had been here long before us, and somehow they were connected to the human footprints we had found. It was clear now that we weren't just uncovering an ancient civilization or an abandoned research station. We had stumbled onto something much larger, something far beyond our comprehension. The echoes of the past were all around us, and this being, this entity, was part of a story that had stretched across the stars for longer than we could imagine. We weren't just exploring this desolate world, we were standing at the precipice of an answer to a question humanity had never thought to ask. The being's eyes seemed to pierce through me, as though it could see every thought, every fear. "You are not the first, but you will be the last." The figure stood motionless, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity, as if reading every thought that passed through my mind. My heart was pounding in my chest, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. I had expected the unknown, but this was something beyond my comprehension. The being spoke again, its voice a harmonious blend of tones that echoed in my mind. "You've discovered the truth. You were always meant to." I stood frozen, unable to speak. My breath came in ragged gasps, each one clouding my visor. I could barely process what it had said. The truth? Meant to? What was it talking about? Who? Who are you? I managed to stammer, my voice breaking the eerie silence. The being stepped closer, its movement graceful and deliberate, as though it wasn't bound by the same rules of time and space as we were. We are the Etherians, it said simply, the name sounding alien yet somehow familiar. We were once like you, born from Earth, but we transcended your understanding of existence long ago. We are the caretakers of knowledge, the keepers of humanity's legacy across the stars. The words were like a punch to the gut. Born from Earth, I looked around at the broken structures, the ancient remnants of technology, and the ruins that surrounded us. This place had once been home to humans. It was undeniable now. And yet, how could this being, this alien, be connected to them? To us? We left Earth millennia ago, the Etherian continued, as if reading my thoughts. But not all of us. Some remained, sent to the far reaches of the galaxy to plant the seeds of humanity's potential. This world was one of those seeds. A test. My mind raced, trying to process what I was hearing. A test. For what? The Etherian's expression, if it could be called that, shifted, its shimmering face almost imperceptibly changing. For survival. For resilience. For the ability to adapt to the impossible. A chill ran down my spine. The footprints we had followed, those human-shaped impressions in the barren ground, had not been left by some explorers from Earth. They had been left by the ancestors of humanity, beings who had somehow come to this impossible planet long before us, perhaps even millennia ago. Why didn't they return? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, dreading the answer. The being tilted its head, a movement that somehow conveyed sadness. Some survived, some adapted, but most perished. It paused, letting the weight of its words settle in. The trials were harsh, and many were not prepared. It was never meant to be easy. Only the strongest could endure, and even they could not stay forever. I looked at the ruins around us. It all began to make sense in a twisted, unimaginable way. The technology, the strange symbols, the human footprints scattered across the planet, they were not random. They were part of a grand design, a long-forgotten mission initiated by humanity itself, or rather, by those who had once left Earth. You've been waiting for us? I asked, my voice shaking. The Etherian nodded. Not all of you. Just you, the ones who would find us. The ones who would continue the journey. I felt a knot form in my stomach. The implications were staggering. What do you want from us? I asked, more out of instinct than any real understanding of what I was asking. The being's glowing eyes seemed to soften, its presence no longer as intimidating, though it still carried an immense weight. We are the last of our kind, the final remnants of an ancient race. We were sent to test humanity, to ensure that it would never forget its true potential. But now, it is your turn. I swallowed hard, the significance of the words settling heavily on my shoulders. What does that mean? What do we have to do? The Etherian stretched out its hand, the air around it seeming to shimmer with energy. You must take what you have learned and carry it forward. Humanity must be ready. You must prepare for what is coming. The trials you have seen here, the journey you are on, is only the beginning. A wave of unease washed over me. My mind reeled. What was coming? What was this all leading to? The Etherian's cryptic words, its insistence that we were somehow destined to play a part in this, left me more confused than ever. You will understand when the time comes, it said, as though reading my thoughts once again. But first, you must find the others. There are more footprints to follow, more paths to walk. The being turned and began to glide back into the shadows of the ruins, its shimmering form slowly fading into the darkness. I could hear the faint hum of the pod behind me, still pulsing with that strange energy. We'll be waiting, it said, its voice fading as it disappeared from view. I stood in stunned silence, my mind struggling to piece together the fragments of what had just transpired. The Etherians weren't just a lost race. They were the custodians of humanity's forgotten past and future. And somehow, I had stumbled upon the key to a greater purpose. But I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that we were being watched, that the truth was slipping just out of reach, and that the real journey had only just begun. The moment the Etherian disappeared into the shadows, the world around me felt different, colder, more oppressive. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, struggling to make sense of what had just happened. The presence of the being lingered in my mind, its words echoing in my thoughts. You must find the others. Who were these others? Where would we find them? And why had we been chosen to uncover this secret? The crackling of static over my comm unit snapped me out of my stupor. It was Dr. Thorne, her voice shaky. "Captain, where are you? We've been trying to reach you." I swallowed hard and responded, my voice betraying the confusion and unease still swirling inside me. I'm at the central ruins. I found something. We need to talk. All of us." I could hear the concern in her voice, but there was also a hint of urgency. "We're on our way. Stay put." Minutes passed, or maybe hours' time had lost meaning on this barren world as I waited. The winds had picked up, howling through the ruins, but I hardly noticed. My thoughts were consumed by the Etherian's cryptic words. The legacy of humanity, the trials, the tests, everything about this place seemed to be connected to some vast, unspoken purpose. And now it seemed that purpose had been thrust upon us. I heard footsteps approaching, sharp against the cracked earth. Commander Core, Dr. Thorne, and the rest of the team emerged from the shadows, their faces tense but expectant. They had seen something in the ruins, something that had clearly unsettled them as much as I had been shaken. Their eyes were wide, haunted, as though they, too, had felt the heavy presence of whatever it was we had discovered. "Captain, what happened?" Core asked, his voice low but firm, his eyes searching mine. "We saw the trail of footprints, but what did you find?" I hesitated, trying to gather my thoughts. It's hard to explain. But we're not just here to study this place. It's a test. And we're part of it. I met someone, or something, an entity, a being called the Etherian. It spoke to me. It said we were meant to find this place, and that we would carry humanity's legacy forward. My words felt inadequate, even to my own ears. They couldn't convey the weight, the surrealism of what had happened. But the look on their faces told me they understood. They knew something was happening, something far bigger than any of us could grasp. Thorne, who had been quiet up until then, spoke in a strained voice. I don't understand. How is this possible? How could there be an entity, and why was it waiting for us?" "We don't have all the answers," I replied, my mind racing. "But I'm sure of one thing: we're not just here by accident. Whatever this planet is, it's been waiting for humanity to return, to fulfill something." Core crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "So what do we do now?" I took a deep breath. "We follow the trail. We need to find more answers. The Etherian said we would understand when the time came. But we've only scratched the surface. There's more to this place, more to what happened here. We need to find the others." "The others," Thorne echoed. "Who are they?" "The Etherian said something about them, about footprints. What does it mean?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think it means that this place isn't abandoned. There were more survivors, more like us human, or at least human descendants. They've left a trail, and we need to follow it." Core nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "Then we'll find them. We'll follow the path, no matter where it leads." As we began to prepare to move, I felt the weight of the responsibility settle on my shoulders. We weren't just explorers anymore, we were part of a much larger story, one that stretched across time and space. This planet, with its impossible landscapes and ancient technology, wasn't just a discovery. It was a message meant for us. The Etherians had left their mark on humanity, and it was now our turn to carry that legacy forward. The wind howled again, but this time I didn't feel afraid. We had a purpose now. Whatever challenges awaited us on this strange, desolate world, we would face them together. We had found the first step in a journey that would reshape everything we knew about humanity and its place in the universe. And as we moved forward, I could feel the presence of the Etherian still lingering in the air, guiding us, waiting for us to fulfill the mission it had set in motion long ago. The footprints were still there, waiting to be followed. And this time we would not turn back.